It's 30 minutes past 12 and this is Lunchtime News coming to you live and direct from the Newsfirst studios here in Colombo. I'm Hassan Shazuli. We've got plenty of stories lined up for you this afternoon, including the power crisis and whether power cuts will be imposed tonight as well. All these stories and more in the next 15 minutes, but first, a look at your headlines. One power generating unit at Kelanitissa reactivated. Chinese experts to repair generator at Norochcholai power plant. CEB says no power cuts today. Electrical Engineers on Work to Rule campaign. JVP holds talks in the north and east on forming a government.
උතුරු සහ නැගෙනහිර දෙපළාතේ දෙමළ සහ මුස්ලිම් ජනතාවත් එක්කත් ඒ ප්‍රජානායකයින් එක්ක අපි විශාල සාකච්ඡාවක් කරනවා. ඒ නිසා මේ වැඩේ අපිට කරන්න බෑ තනි සිංහල ආණ්ඩුවකින්.
Special goods and services tax and value added tax amendment bills tabled in Parliament. Let's start off with some news coming in from Parliament. Now, opposition leader Sajid Premadasa made a special statement in Parliament today. He said that the previous chairman and members of the Committee on Public Enterprises and the Committee on Public Accounts must be reappointed. The opposition leader explained as to how national security is reflected in various sectors in the country in the Parliament as well. The government promised the people that they will find the root cause behind the April 21st attacks and find the masterminds behind it. Have they done it? The Catholic community, who was severely impacted by the April 21st attacks, has denounced this government entirely. His Eminence Cardinal Malcolm Ranjit has denounced the affairs of this government.
Our country has become a victim of geopolitical power struggles.
The rulers have sold our national assets to foreign entities and now they are begging for dollars across the world. Are they doing it for the love of our country? Is this what they promised to the people? Our country's economic growth in the third quarter in 2021 is negative 1.5. All other countries are in the positive range. Only our country is at a negative level. So how can this government develop an argument saying that it was because of COVID-19 that we are facing this crisis? Now, in his remarks in Parliament, the opposition leader also questioned as to why the Parliament was prorogued last year. He pointed out that the Committee on Public Accounts and the Committee on Public Enterprises have ceased to exist and that the chairman, who acted in a transparent way, have been removed after Parliament was prorogued. Now, in his remarks, the leader of the opposition said that these committees must exist to attain prosperity in the country. He also asked the President to become a glimmer of hope in these dark times where the people have become extremely critical of the government. He requested the President to reappoint the chairman of the Committee on Public Accounts and the Committee on Public Enterprises, who were removed to allow them to continue their investigations under the second session of the Parliament. Now, concluding his statement, opposition leader Sajid Premadasa had a special message to the President. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
A successful man is one who can lay a firm foundation with the bricks others have thrown at him. සාර්ථක මිනිසෙකු තමා වෙත දමා ගසන ලද ගඩොලින් ශක්තිමත් අත්තිවාරමක් ගොඩනැගිය හැකි පුද්ගලයෙකි. අමතක කරන්න එපා මම මේ වගේ පුද්ගලයෙක්.
In other news from the Parliament, now Leader of the House, Minister Dinesh Gunawardena, tabled two new bills in Parliament today. The bills were of the Special Goods and Services Tax and the Value Added Tax Amendment Act. Meanwhile, the Committee on Parliamentary Business, chaired by Speaker Mahinda Yapa, was appointed today. 20 MPs from government and opposition parties are part of the committee. In rest of the day's news, the 72nd higher ordination ceremony of the Sri Lanka Ramanya sect was held under the patronage of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa last afternoon. The ceremony was held at the Sri Sumana Kirti Maha Pirivena in Valu area. The higher ordination ceremony began after the arrival of the chief prelate of the Sri Lanka Ramanya sect, Agamaha Pandita Most Venerable Makulave Sri Wimalathero. The ceremony is held once in 2 years at a selected venue. It was held at the Sri Sumana Kirti Maha Pirivena in Valu area this year. 500 monks were ordained at the ceremony. The president also presented credentials to 5 monks at the ceremony. We have been able to conduct the ordination ceremony this year because the government took timely measures and provided vaccines, even if it is 3 doses. The President also unveiled a plaque commemorating the commencement of the Upasampada Mahavinaya Karma this year. While the power crisis and power cuts have become a talking point in the country, the Ceylon Electricity Board says it has received 1,800 metric tons of diesel required by the Kelanitissa power plant this morning. Now this would reactivate one power generating unit that will generate 115 megawatts of power.
What is the situation at the Kelanitissa power plant? The two power generating units at the Kelanitissa power plant became inactive after it ran out of fuel yesterday. As a result, the Ceylon Electricity Board had to impose power cuts for 1.5 hours in many areas last night. The national grid lost 282 megawatts of electricity after the two power generating units had become active. But the Ceylon Electricity Board said the Kelanitissa power plant had received 1,800 metric tons of diesel this morning. CEB spokesperson Andrew Naumani said one power generating unit had been made active afterwards. 115 megawatts of power are flowing into the national grid from this unit. The CEB spokesperson said the other power generating unit can be made active this evening. He added that there would be no need to impose power cuts tonight. Yesterday, CEB engineers said they had to impose power cuts as the Kelanitissa power plant had been disconnected from the national grid. The power cuts were imposed in 4 phases across the country for an hour and 45 minutes. Power cuts were imposed in this manner last night. What is the situation of the Norochcholai power plant? 2 Chinese specialists have arrived in Sri Lanka to repair a generator at the Norochcholai power plant. The Ceylon Electricity Board said that the necessary steps are being taken to rectify the problem in the generator. According to the CEB, the national grid had lost 300 megawatts of electricity as the generator has malfunctioned. Will power cuts be imposed today? The Ministry of Power says it will be able to provide uninterrupted power supply if power plants receive fuel. Minister of Power Gamini Lokuge said the Norochcholai power plant would function in full capacity from the 25th of this month. He added that this is expected to resolve the power crisis. What is the situation of the strike by CEB Electrical Engineers? The CEB Electrical Engineers has said they will engage in a work-to-rule campaign until their demands are met. The union's executive committee member Charita Jainath Dairavna said a decision hasn't been made yet on removing the general manager from his position.
That is an internal issue. We have allowed the CEB to resolve that. The engineers union went to court. A court order has been issued. The CEB will consult the Attorney General and rectify this situation. Both parties, including the former Director General, went to court. There is a solution. We will obtain loan to purchase fuel. This has been approved. We will also receive dollars from exports and foreign remittances. We can handle the situation using this money. No, there is no such issue. According to what I see, the media spokesmen in both ministries are the ones expressing conflicting views. However, the common objective of all cabinet ministers is to provide uninterrupted electricity to the people. Right, so let's take a look at some news on the economic front. The Central Bank of Sri Lanka says that its monetary board has decided to adopt several policy measures. This includes the increase in policy rates by 50 basis points each.
The Central Bank of Sri Lanka says its monetary board decided to increase the standing deposit facility rate and the standing lending facility rate to 5.5% and 6.5% respectively. The monetary board decided to increase the bank rate when automatically adjusted with the standing lending facility rate to 9.5%. The statutory reserve ratio will remain unchanged at 4%. Meanwhile, lending rates and saving rates of banks are likely to rise in line with the increase in policy rates.
Central Bank Governor Ajit Niwad Cabral has explained the decision to increase policy rates after 5 months. This was during a media briefing held recently.
The Central Bank decided that we would once again, after a period of about 5 months, that the policy rate would be increased, mainly because we want to give a very clear message that we would want to see the inflation being dealt with, and also to give a message that the external sector needs to be stabilized further. We have taken certain measures.
Governor, how is the $500 million for ISB, how was it paid? Did we pay it from our reserves?
Every payment is made by the reserves, and then with the inflows that we receive. So it is from the reserves we allocate the funds as and when the payments, not only for ISBs, for every single payment for the debt of the government is paid the same way.
What steps have been taken to address the dollar shortage in the country? How will we raise the money to purchase essential goods?
If you see one item of our policy measures, we have reached an agreement with the licensed commercial banks that they too would be bearing the financing and the arrangement of the financing of certain essential goods, so that essential goods are not only put as a burden to the state banks, so it will be in proportionate to the dollar earnings as well as the dollar incomes that they receive. We would be negotiating with them, and they will be taking a part of those bills as well, so that there will be a greater stability in the overall external sector.
Governor, what is the current reserve position after bond settlement? Because there was a controversy about the usability of a Chinese swap.
The Chinese swap is within our range of products as well as currencies, and we have taken that into our reserves quite naturally. It is used for all purposes that we would like to use it for. But at the moment, the reserve numbers, we announce it once a month, and it will be there at the end of this month in our weekly indicators.
In response to questions about the termination of the Japan-funded light rail project in Colombo, Foreign Minister G.L. Peiris has said there is no harm in admitting that there are situations that could have been handled better. The Foreign Minister made these remarks during a media briefing held jointly with the Japanese embassy in Colombo to mark the 70th anniversary of Japan-Sri Lanka relations.
Decisions are made from time to time. They are also reviewed, and I don't think that there is harm in admitting there are situations that could have been handled better. Nobody claims to be perfect. Nobody claims infallibility. So, the way forward in foreign relations, for indeed in human relations, is to reflect, as we are doing now, on 70 years of an inherently valuable relationship. What has been accomplished now? It may be that there are some decisions that could have been made better. That is bound to be the case. So if that is the case, then to learn from the experience of the past and to decide how things can be handled with greater finesse in the future.
Japanese Ambassador to Sri Lanka and Foreign Secretary Admiral Professor Jainath Kolombage and other dignitaries were also present.
Japan and Sri Lanka continue to stand by one another in time of need, while fostering mutual trust and respect through the course of our long history. I am confident that this special year will be a fruitful one for us and will be a precious opportunity for both countries to strengthen the ties even further, including between our nationals.
The Japanese ambassador to Sri Lanka, Mizukoshi Hideaki, has presented essential medical equipment for COVID-19 to Minister of Health Kehelia Rambukwala yesterday. Senior representative of the Japan International Cooperation Agency, Takashima Koifumi, was also present at the occasion. The provided equipment, valued at 300 million rupees, was procured through JICA's Technical Cooperation Project for strengthening COVID-19 response. It included ventilators, ICU beds, blood gas analyzers, real-time PCR machines, an automated RNA-DNA extractor, and ultra-low temperature freezers. They will be distributed to base hospitals in Teldenia, Warkapula, Valikanda, Pimbura, Nawalapitiya, Hinguraggoda, Karavanella and Abissavella, and the District General Hospital in Hambantota. Now, while medical equipment has been provided to hospitals in Sri Lanka for COVID-19 response, the Director General of Health Services has confirmed that 12 COVID-19 deaths were reported in the country yesterday. Accordingly, the total number of COVID-19 fatalities has risen to 15,243. 829 new COVID-19 cases were detected in the country yesterday. Accordingly, the total number of confirmed COVID-19 cases in Sri Lanka now stands at 598,536. Meanwhile, 14,656 infected COVID-19 patients are currently receiving treatment at hospitals. Let's now go to rural Sri Lanka. Minister of Agriculture Mahinda Alutgamage visited paddy fields in Kadirapura in Pannala to monitor the status of their cultivations.
These are paddy fields in Kadirapura, Pannala in the Kurunegala district. Organic fertilizer produced by farmers were used for their cultivation. Farmers point out that their harvests were satisfactory after using their own fertilizer. Minister of Agriculture Mahinda Alutgamage expressed views to the media during his visit.
Since we didn't provide chemical fertilizer, farmers were accusing us, stating that their harvests had dropped. But if we visit these fields, we can see that farmers have reaped a good harvest. We are witnessing something different this time. If we consider in general, we can see that paddy harvests have declined by about 10 or 15% this time in this area. The farmers have extended their support even amidst difficulties.
Now, farmers in other parts of the country are lamenting that their harvests have dropped after using the liquid fertilizer provided by the government.
Farmers in Yudhaganawa in Polonnaruwa say they have been badly affected by the fertilizer crisis. They say their cultivations have failed after using the liquid organic fertilizer provided by the government. The farmers point out that their crops haven't grown well, although it's been more than a month and a half since they applied fertilizer. Rubber cultivators in Bulat Sinhala say they have been affected by the fertilizer crisis as well. They say that their livelihoods have been disrupted as they have lost their income after their cultivations have failed due to the shortage of fertilizer. These cultivators say that organic fertilizer cannot be used to cultivate rubber. Farmers have abandoned many paddy fields in Maliyadevapura in Tamuttegama. They say they have not been able to cultivate as they haven't received fertilizer on time. Farmers point out that they cannot reap any harvest despite using organic fertilizer.
Politburo member of the Janata Vimukti Peramuna, KD Lal Kanta, expressed views on the fertilizer crisis in the country.
The harvest reaped during the Maha season has dropped. They did not give us fertilizer because they didn't have enough dollars to purchase them. It wasn't because they care for us. Do you think that the government sympathizes with us? Organic fertilizer was just an excuse they gave the people. There are so many other countries across the world that are more developed than us. Have they transformed into 100% green agriculture? Experts say that their plans for organic fertilizer are impossible. When people complain about not having food to eat, they tell us to drink porridge because it is healthy. When people complain that they cannot even afford an egg to eat, they tell them to eat jackfruit seeds because they consist of the same nutrients. We are heading towards such an era.
In rest of the day's news, an 18-member delegation led by South Korean Speaker Park Bong-seok arrived in Sri Lanka last night on a 4-day official visit.
The delegation, including the South Korean speaker, was received at the Bandaranaike International Airport by a group of officials, including Minister Namal Rajapaksa. During his visit, the Korean speaker is scheduled to meet with top officials, including the President and the Prime Minister. He is also due to visit the Sri Lankan Parliament. During his visit, he is scheduled to meet with top officials, including the President and the Prime Minister. He is also due to visit Parliament following the Speaker's invitation. He will meet with the Foreign Minister and other ministers and MPs as well. The Korean government has worked closely with the Sri Lankan government. More than 22,000 Sri Lankans are currently working in Korea. This visit will hopefully help both countries work closely together to strengthen their ties.
In In some political news now, Norochcholai is the leader of the Jathika Janabalawegya. He says he will limit his cabinet to 25 ministers if he becomes president. Now, he told a meeting in Norochcholai yesterday that discussions are taking place with political party leaders in the north and eastern provinces on forming a new government.
Although the people have good hopes, the rulers have bad aspirations. Therefore, who is at fault? Is it the rulers? But if the people are repeating the same mistake, then there is a problem with us as well. They don't have enough dollars to import fuel or crude oil required to run the refinery. That is the state of this country. Is this a country that doesn't have ports, oil tanks, power plants, oil refineries, historical heritages and prime lands? No, this isn't a country like that. Do you believe that these two parties will uplift the country? If you do so, we have to address that first. I am living in a country where we have to dream of buying a car. Can you tell me why I should remain in this country? You say you're going to govern the country in the future. Let's assume that we trusted you and voted for you. We don't need free money. We can earn and fulfill our own needs. There is no issue in that. Tell us what you hope to do in future. If you don't believe in us, then don't come forward. But it is our duty to make you believe in us. We will limit our cabinet to 25 ministers and 25 deputy ministers. We are holding talks with the Tamil and Muslim people and community leaders in the north and east. We can't do this with a government having only Sinhalese. We can't do this with the support of only the Sinhalese. We definitely require the support of the Tamils and Muslims as well.
Minister of Youth and Sports Affairs Nama Rajapaksa says it is the duty of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party to act responsibly as a representative of the ruling faction. The minister expressed the following views while responding to questions raised by journalists.
Different people have different views. I personally think that these matters must not be discussed publicly. These must be discussed during cabinet meetings and party meetings. I think they must think before they act.
The
people did not bring us into power for everyone to become rulers. If we appointed someone as the president of the country, we must follow their policy. I am sure the people are aware of that. Everyone has the right to raise their concerns, but as a party representing the ruling faction, they must understand their responsibility as well. Although parties affiliated with the ruling faction accuse us, we don't consider it seriously. The SLFP was protected by the SLPP, by Mahinda Rajapaksa. If that did not happen, the SLFP would have joined the UNP during the good governance regime and then left helpless. When they wanted to represent the SLPP, we agreed to it. There are around 5.2 million people who did not vote for the president. There should be someone to represent them as well.
The Minister of Public Services, Janaka Bandara Thennakoon, has issued a gazette declaring the retirement age for public sector employees as 65 years. Now, this is based on the 2022 budget proposal. According to the gazette issued by the Public Services Minister, the retirement age for public sector employees has been increased to 65 years with effect from the 1st of January. It states that public sector employees can retire after the age of 55 and that retirement will only be made mandatory at the age of 65. Now, workers at the Dehiwala Zoo have refrained from carrying out their duties apart from feeding animals. It comes as part of a strike launched by them recently.
Employees at the Dehiwala Zoological Gardens representing 2 unions refrained from engaging in their services since Tuesday morning. They are opposing the objections raised by veterinarians and the Director General of the Department of Zoological Gardens to investigate the illnesses and deaths of animals. The workers are also demanding that the 5,000 rupee allowance paid for accidents be given to all employees. The Satyagraha launched by the protesters entered its 3rd day today.
And that's a wrap of Lunchtime News. Thanks for stopping by. More news will come your way at 1:55. Bye for now.
අපිට වග්ගඩු අමාරු තියෙන ඇත්තොන්ට හරි සහනයක් කරලා දුන්නා.
අද අත ළඟටම ඇවිත් තියෙන අපිට වතුර දීලා තියෙන ගම්මැද්දේ. ඉතින් ගොඩක් සතුටුයි අපිට ඉතින් ඊට වඩා වෙන දෙයක් නැහැ.
අපේ දරු පරම්පරාවටවත් වග්ගඩු අමාරු නැතු